Hey guys, tonight we're going to hike a part of the Great Wall you've probably never heard of. Not the polished stone slabs in tourist brochures, not the crumbling battlements you see in moody drone footage, but the in-between bits, the parts with no name, the lonely outposts they called rest towers, small, half-forgotten things clinging to the ridge like stubborn moss. No flag-raising ceremonies here, just wind, dust and silence. You're going to be a soldier tonight, not a general, not a hero, just another cold pair of feet in a worn hemp boot, and spoiler alert, you might not make it past day one. You'll be underfed, underpaid, and overexposed to everything from frostbite to wild boars. But hey, at least the stars are nice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'll drop a comment below and let me know what city are you in, and what time is it right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand where the wall curves gently along a ridge, your breath already coming short. It's the altitude or the weight of your gear, or maybe just the sheer fact that you've never walked this far uphill in your life. To your left, a shadow squats on the horizon, a small tower, not even 2 stories high. That's your home tonight. Don't see look like much on that. Because it wasn't meant to. These were not built for show. These were the budget motels of the Great Wall, rough stone cubes built in haste, meant to shelter patrolling soldiers when there was no fort nearby. Most people today don't even know they exist. Call them rest towers. Wind shelters you. Just call it the place with fewer snakes than outside, hopefully. Inside, it smells like damp wool and old firewood. There's no door, just a crude frame where one might have hung. The floor is uneven and patched with straw. There's a stack of cracked tiles in one corner. The walls have soot marks where past soldiers tried to light fires. The ceiling? Half-rotted beams, exposed to the sky in places. Drop your pack and try not to cough too loud, or the cold here isn't dramatic, it's slow, persuasive, the kind that seeps into your bones with bureaucratic patience. You sit on a flat stone and realize you're already counting the hours until sunrise. What most people don't know is that these towers were crucial to the operation of the wall. Positioned roughly a mile or 2 apart, they allowed soldiers to patrol long stretches without having to return to base. Think of them as ancient workstations with 0 amenities and a high risk of wolves. No, these weren't garrison towers like the ones you see in glossy reconstructions. These had no weapon racks, no signal fires. Just a floor, a ceiling, and enough shelter to let a man sit and eat without wind stealing his chopsticks. Illinois official records don't talk much about them. Most what we know comes from scattered field notes, folk tales, or believe it or not graffiti. Soldiers used to scratch things into the stone, sometimes just names, sometimes entire conversations. One tower in Hebei province has a wall full of diary entries carved into a tinny stone blogs from 500 years ago. Historians still argue whether those were real soldiers or bored stonemasons. But here's what you can be sure of. If you were posted to one of these towers, you were alone. No squad, no cook, no backup. Maybe you'd meet another patrol in the next tower tomorrow. Maybe not. You start unpacking your ration bag. It's not much. A lump of hard millet cake, a strip of cured turnip, something vaguely meat-shaped. You chew slowly, trying not to crack a molar. You're not sure if it's dinner or a dental hazard. The wind howls through a crack in the wall. You stuff it with straw. It doesn't help. It falls fast in the mountain. You have no lantern. You find a charred stick from a previous fire and try to relight it. Nothing. Maybe you should have stolen embers from the last camp. Too late now. And this is just day one. You lean against the wall and stare out through the open doorway. Moon rises, cold and indifferent. Below, the wall snakes off into the darkness, an ancient line of duty that nobody thanks you for walking. But still, you're here, holding the line, lone. Wake up cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, but the kind that makes your spine stiff and your teeth feel loose, kind that feels like it crept in overnight and rearranged your bones. You must have drifted off sitting up, head against the stone wall, knees pulled to your chest. There's a soft crunching sound when you move, frost on your cloak. It froze while you were still wearing it. Welcome to life in a rest tower. You step outside and stretching means trying not to pull a muscle in 3 layers of damp clothing. Morning light is spilling slowly across the hills, catching the jagged silhouette of another squat tower a few hills away. That's your next stop. But before that, let's talk about the thing you're standing in. Most people think the Great Wall is just thought a wall, an endless line of bricks and battlements. But that's like calling a city just pavement. The real life of the wall lies in its infrastructure, and rest towers were a key part of that. They were the filler between the famous bits. Things that made the impossible possible. Oh, what exactly is a rest town architectural terms? Somewhere between a glorified tool shed and a very sad cabin, usually about 3 to 5 meters tall, square footprint, no second floor, built with local stone, mud mortar, and the optimism that no one would be inside long enough for it to matter. Some had small fireplaces carved into the wall. Most didn't. A few had raised platforms to keep bedding off the damp floor. Those were considered luxury models, and they were everywhere. Hidden in the hills, tucked between ridge lines. I'm so ruined today they just look like big rocks. Their job wasn't to fight. Their job was to wait for patrollers, for messages, for weather to clear, for things that may or may not happen. There's a reason you don't see them on postcards. But they mattered. Without them, soldiers couldn't rest during long-range patrols. They'd collapse from exposure, or worse, fall asleep on watch and miss an ambush. These towers were the breaks between beats, the commas in a very long sentence made of stone and duty. You kneel by the tower wall, brushing away loose dirt. Underneath, a cluster of strange little holes catches your eye. Ventilation gaps, maybe. Or just the result of poor construction. You squint, then spot something wedged in the mortar, a piece of old wood, burned on one end, a tiny splinter of fire history. Ooh, can't help but smile. Someone was here before you, cold, tired, probably hungrier than you. And they tried to start a fire, just like you did. Maybe they failed too, but the attempt remains. Not much writing about these towers. Most historical documents focus on the bigger stuff: garrisons, the supply stations, the wars. Rest towers fall through the cracks. Few King Dynasty logs mention them in passing, using terms like temporary hold points or night shelters. But the definitions are vague. Historians still argue over what qualifies as an official rest tower versus, say, a field-built hut. Some say they were originally part of the master design. Others believe they were added later by local commanders improvising solutions for rough terrain. There's even a theory that some were built entirely by villagers, not military engineers, and later adopted by the army. You lace up your boots tighter. It's time to move. A tower behind you, Dosey wave goodbye it. It's just stone and silence again as you walk. You imagine how many others have followed this same ridge, stopping at that same weather-beaten cube. And just like that, the tower becomes a memory. A smudge behind you, half erased by morning fog, or walking now. Uphill again, always uphill. The path between towers isn't really a path, it's more of a suggestion. Jagged stones poke up through patchy grass, and the earth crumbles under your boots with every other step. Your legs are already complaining. And it's not even mid-morning. Welcome to the commute. Who start to wonder? Who built this whole thing? Not the wall itself, that's 1,000 textbooks deep. You mean the in-between bits, the towers, the trails, the miserable little stone cubes you keep calling shelter. Because if you were to guess, it wasn't generals, it wasn't architects, it wasn't even soldiers. It was people who had no choice. That's something you learn fast out here. Most of the wall wasn't built by warriors. It was built by farmers, bought convicts, migrants, sometimes even merchants paying off taxes in labor. The imperial government had a talent for turning desperation into infrastructure. You pause to catch your breath beside a crumbling milestone marker, just a stub of sandstone with barely legible brushstrokes. It's tilted like it's been trying to nap for a few centuries. You can still make out a character or two, probably directions, or maybe a warning. Either way, it's the only signpost you'll get today. Act to the builders. Historical records mention corvée labor, a fancy term for state-mandated service. Basically, if you owed taxes and couldn't pay them in grain or silver, you paid them in sweat. Thousands of peasants, rounded up and sent north to dig ditches, stack stones. There are tales, some exaggerated, some not off men being buried where they collapse. No tombstones, no records, just another layer in the wall's foundation. And then there were the exile. People convicted of minor crime as stealing a chicken, saying the wrong thing in the market were sometimes sentenced to construction labor on the frontier. Sent to the wall wasn't just poetic, it was literal. Some even brought their families, turning construction sites into makeshift villages. Others tried to escape, and their skeletons became historical footnotes. Art house the twist, some of these so-called criminals were actually the most efficient builders. Why? Because they wanted to get it over with. Faster they finished the assigned quota, the sooner they could go home if they lived long enough. Ooh, crest, another rye eggs burning. Up ahead you spot a figure, a shape hunched beside a pile of rocks. You tense for a moment, but it's not a person. Just an old sculpture fragment. Maybe a marker. Maybe a milestone. Maybe an accidental tourist. As you pass, you think about the hands that stacked these rocks. Calloused, cracked, possibly shackled. You wonder if they argued about how square the corners should be, if they complained about the food, if they carved their names into the beams just to be remembered. Or maybe they didn't have time for that. There's an ongoing debate in historical circles. Were these towers part of a standardized imperial blueprint? Or were they improvised, built by whoever happened to be around? Some archaeologists point to variations in design, some with rounded corners, some with narrow windows, some with none at all. It's like flipping through a portfolio of forgotten architecture, each one reflecting the builder's skill, mood, or access to halfway decent materials. And the truth is, no one's entirely sure. The documentation is spotty. Maps from different dynasties contradict each other. Some even show towers in places where there's now nothing but grass and rumor. The wind picks up again, dry and impatient. You tighten your scarf. All reach the next tower by midday. It looks worse than the last. Half the roof is missing, and a tree has decided to grow out of one corner. You duck inside anyway. It smells like lichen and ash. You sit back against the wall and peel off your boots for a moment. Your socks are damp. Your toes are pale. You stretch them out near a patch of sunlight on the floor and imagine what it must have been like to build this thing. Stone by stone. In freezing wind. With someone shouting over your shoulder. You'd probably want a lunch break too, or chewing slowly, carefully. The cake in your hand is more compressed grit than foodsome kind of millet brick, baked until flavorless, and practically waterproof. Soak it in your mouth like a squirrel hoarding soggy seeds. It's not about taste, it's about calories. This is what fuels patrols on the wall, not glorious feasts in candlelit halls. Not giant dumpling platters. Just dense, dry rations you can carry without attracting mold or mice. And in rest towers like this one, food was more important than armor. Without it, you didn't just lose strength. You lost heat. You lost focus. You lost your place in the frozen world. In your ration pouch today, there's also a wad of fermented radish wrapped in bark paper. That's your vegetable. There's no meat knot unless you count a mysterious strip of grey-brown fibre that might have once been yak jerky, or part of a boot. You chew it anyway. Not for pleasure, for tradition. Disappointing? Sure, but it was enough to survive. When things ran out, they had to improvise. Clever types figured out how to make soup from dry moss and snowmelders boiled pine needles with salt of fake broth. It didn't. Tea helped much, but it was warm. And that counted for something. Every now and then, supply convoys would arrive, goat caravans bristling with sacks of barley, dried tofu skins, bundles of twigs, and sometimes, miracle of miracles, oil. That meant you could fry something instead of chewing it until it dissolved from sadness. At Dowie get excited fried eggs waren. Tea on the menu. Even the officers didn't eat well. There's a record from the Ming Dynasty describing a commander's celebratory meal. Half bowl of steamed millet, 2 pickled plums, and wine brewed from bitter root. So yeah, the bar was low. You check the small niche in the wall behind you. Someone before you left a flat-bottomed clay bowl there, scorched black from years of desperate meals. There's even a single chopstick beside it. Just one. Either the other broke, or they were in too much of a hurry to notice. Ooh, clean the bowl out with a handful of dry grass and dump in the rest of your boiler scraping fire tonight, but it helps to pretend. Here's a fun one. In some regions, soldiers carried brick tea, pressed cubes of low-grade tea mixed with herbs and even a little flour. They'd shave pieces off with knives and steep it like soup. It gave energy, masked bad smells, and covered up the fact that you hadn't had real nutrition since last harvest. Ooh, take a sip of cold tea and try not to grimy. The academic world still argues over how effective this diet really was. Some say the simplicity reduced digestive issues. Others claim malnutrition was rampant, and evidence of bone thinning in recovered skeletons supports that. One school of thought even blames food shortages for an entire breakdown in the wall's garrison rotations during the late Ming. Odd for new, not thinking about dynasties or thinking about the next ration. Ooh, here's something outside just the wind, maybe a startled bird. You wrap your food in cloth and tuck it deep into your pack. Out here, even small noises trigger instincts. Hunger makes you protective. Not of gold, not of secrets of food. Back in the corner, you find a patch of sunlight creeping across the floor. You sit beside it, letting your hands warm in the glow. Your belly's not full, but it's no longer gnawing. That's enough to stay upright for another day. Seisk is softening again, shadows crawl across the hills. Another patrol begins soon. Another tower waits, and in your pocket, one last strip of mystery meat clings to hope. You brace yourself before stepping outside. The wind hits like it's been waiting, cold, sharp, insistent. It doesn't knock you over, just peels the warmth off your skin like bark from a tree. Your fingers stiffen almost immediately. You tug your cloak tighter, but it's already damp from last night's frost. The fabric's doing its best. It's just losing. This is what no one tells you. The real enemy on the wall isn't always a foreign army. It's the wind. Ooh, start walking again. Hood low, eyes narrowed against the sting. The terrain's rough here, sloped with loose gravel, random tufts of scrub, and every once in a while, a stubborn rock trying to trip you up like it's mad about something. You don't fall, but you curse quietly. Wind steals that too. Ooh, glance up at the sky, clear blue, but deceptively calm. That's the trap. It always looks peaceful before it gets mean. And up here, the elevation makes things worse. Every breeze carries teeth. Some nights, soldiers swore the wind spoke. Whispered things, names, orders, warnings. You're not superstitious, of course, but you keep your ears covered anyway. The problem with rest towers was never just the cold, was the exposure. Unlike the sturdier garrisons, these towers were never meant to shield you completely. Their walls were thin. Their doors, if they had them, were often no more than hanging mats or split boards wedged sideways. Chimneys didn't always work. Windows were basically holes, which means when the wind decided to visit, it didn't knock, it moved in. Ooh, remember last night how your breath formed clouds even inside the tower? How frost grew along the inside wall, not the outside, the inside. And when you tried to sleep, the air sucked the warmth right out of your blanket like it had something to prove. There's a chilling statistic that makes the rounds in historical circles. Some estimates say more soldiers died of exposure or illness on the wall than from battle. Pneumonia, hypothermia, starvation, respiratory infections. And those are just the ones we have names for. A single night in the wrong tower during a windstorm could mean your last patrol. You reach another tower, squat and square like it's trying to hunch against the wind. One wall is partly collapsed, its bricks scattered like ancient dice. You duck inside, no roof. A few wooden planks across the top beams, but most of them look like they lost a fight with time and termites. Till there's a corner less touched by the wind. You settle there, back to the wall, trying to remember what warmth feels like. There's a story that floats around. During the Ming Dynasty, an officer stationed near the western section of the wall wrote a desperate letter requesting more coats for his men. He described fingers blackened from frostbite, soldiers burning parts of the tower itself to stay alive. The letter was never answered. Centuries later, a scrap of it was found under a roof tile, used as insulation. Academic debates still rage over whether it was genuine or just a cleverly forged piece of protest fiction. Either way, it rings true. Ooh, blow into your hand, Dosen. Tea help much. Your breath just turns to mist and floats away, useless and theatrical. To truth you start to fear the wind more than anything else. It strips you down, layer by layer, not just your body, but your thoughts. After a few days of this, you stop caring about drills or orders. You only think about heat, fire, dry socks. You'd trade medals for mittens, steer tower holds. Few of them were smartly placed behind natural windbreaks hills. Trees, ridged but most? Nope. Just perched on the spine of the world, no shelter in sight. Maybe the builders didn't know better. Maybe they didn't care. Or maybe they figured, if the wind doesn't kill you, you're tough enough for anything else. Look around the broken tower, eyeing the stones, the worn groove where generations of boots paced. You can almost see the outlines of others before you, crouched here, teeth chattering, waiting for the sky to change. They survived, you will too, maybe. Find it almost by accident. To wall of this rest tower is eye smooth like the others there. A patch just under eye level, where the stones have been worn down by more than just wind. Run your fingers over it. Scratches, lines. You lean in, letters. One carved something hot first. Ooh, expect official order. Maybe a military tally, or dates, or something boring and useful. But no, these aren't reports. These are diary entries, tiny ones, scrawled in uneven brushstrokes, like someone used a burnt twig or a nail dipped in soot. You can just barely read one. No again. I miss salt, and home, as another. Just a name, Yulang. Below that, a scratched drawing of what looks like a donkey? Or maybe a pig with ambition. Hard to say. Ooh, smile. It's the first time today. This is the kind of thing you don't find in history books. Disorganized thoughts, jokes with no punchline, bad doodles. And yet, it's also the most human part of this place. These weren't just outposts, they were sketchbooks, message boards, secret confessionals. Some towers across the wall have been found with entire walls of scribbled notes, some angry, some poetic, some just counting the days. In Hebei, one scholar discovered over 80 separate carvings in a single rest tower, and not a single one mentioned the war, just weather, food, feet, to make sense. What else are you going to do when the wind's howling and your soup's frozen solid? Ooh, reach into your own pouch, pulling out a small, flat rock, smooth on one side, soft enough to scratch with your belt buckle. You hesitate? Then right, till hot frozen. Yet, place it gently in the corner with a few other forgotten items. A broken spoon, a bead, a cracked gourd cap. Rest tower time capsule. Someone might find it one day, or not, doesn't really matter. The act of leaving something behind, that's the whole point. What's curious is how these messages have survived. Paper would rot, wood would burn, but stone remembers. And even then, historians still argue over what counts as valid historical record. Some academics dismiss graffiti as irrelevant. Others believe it's the closest we'll ever get to the real thoughts of the nameless thousands who stood where you stand. The debate's been going for decades. Ooh, sit down on a flat slab near the doorway, resting your chin on your knees. The stone is cold, of course. Everything is. But for a moment, the tower feels full, like you're not alone, like you've joined a strange, scribbling brotherhood across centuries, each soldier or sentry, carving out little pieces of themselves just to be heard by anyone, or no one. Some notes were practical. Do not sleep near the west wall axe. Others were more cryptic. The stars are wrong tonight. One scratched message from the early Qing period reads simply, she would not wait for me. No name.
No date.
Just heartbreak, carved in granite. And then there are the oddity on tower had a carefully etched recipe for soup. involving boiled goat skin and wild garlic. Another featured a full diagram of a pigeon, labeled in detail, as if someone planned to become a bird scholar after surviving military service. Historians can't agree if it was boredom or brilliance. Probably both. You pull your cloak tighter and look at your tiny inscription again. It's nothing profound, but it's yours. Your voice added to the wall in its own small, stubborn way. Outside, a cloud passes over the sun, dragging shadows across the hills. You wonder what kind of soldier Yu Liang was. What kind of person? Did he make it back home? Did he ever find salt? You hope so. You rise, stretch, and take one last look at the carvings. Dozens of voices barely clinging to the stone. Not heroes, not generals, just people. Just cold, tired people with bad handwriting. Us like ya. You rub your hands together and exhale into your palms. The air turns your breath into a thin fog that evaporates almost instantly. There's no fire in this tower. No coals. No lantern. Just that tiny blackened spot on the ground where someone tried. You kneel beside it and prod the ash with a stick. Cold. Dead. Probably days old. Now the real problem begins. You need fire, not just for warmth, but for survival. Without it, your food stays frozen, your hands stay numb, and your morale drops faster than your body temperature. But here's the kicker. Most rest towers didn't come stocked with firewood. No kindling, no fuel. Not even a sad, damp log waiting in the corner. Out here, if you want fire, you bring it with you. You borrow it. The old soldiers had a phrase for it. Stealing fire. It didn't mean theft in the criminal sense. Meant scraping coals from the last tower and carrying them carefully, sometimes wrapped in dried moss, tucked inside an old turtle shell, or even buried in warm ashes inside a pouch. If you were lucky, it'd still be glowing by the time you reached the next stop. If not, well, you'd have to get creative. Manayu, out of luck. You scour the corners of the tower, no dry wood. The beams overhead are too damp and too structural to sacrifice. You snap a twig from your broom-handle spear. It fizzles out before it catches. You try to twist up some straw and light it with flint. Nothing. The spark jumps and dies. Over and over, each failure makes the wind outside seem louder. Eventually, you give up. You sit in the cold again, hands between your knees, thinking about how much fire meant to people like you. Not in a cozy, fireplace kind of way. In a don't die tonight kind of way. And fire was more than warmth. It was the difference between edible and poisonous, between visibility and ambush, between hearing wild dogs growl and seeing them circle. In some sections of the wall, soldiers were issued tiny braziers, metal bowls you could pack with coals and carry on a rope. Others got nothing, just a flint, some hope, and a strong dislike for frostbite. Occasionally, they'd beg nearby villagers for dried dung to burn, or barter, or outright sneak into abandoned towers hoping someone left behind a glowing ember under a heap of ash. There's a story passed down in northern Shanxi, might be legend, might not, of a soldier who smuggled fire in a hollowed-out turnip. He walked 10 miles with it, breathing into the stem every few minutes to keep it alive. When he finally reached the next tower, the ember lit a full blaze that kept 6 soldiers from freezing to death that night. Historians still debate whether it was even possible to preserve a coal like that for that long. Physics says probably not. Folklore says yes, and honestly, tonight, you want to believe the turnip did its job. You wonder if the famous beacon fires, those massive signals the wall is known for, ever helped in moments like this. Could someone see a distant blaze and send a runner to borrow flame? Or were those strictly for military alert, off-limits to shivering patrols? There's no clear answer. And no beacon tonight. You light a tiny wick from your flint again, but the wind snuffs it the moment it sparks. A few centuries ago, someone in your exact position probably did the same thing. And probably failed. You can almost hear them curse in ancient dialect. Ooh, pull your blanket tighter and settle into a curl in the driest corner. Your fingers are stiff. Your breath is shallow, but your eyes are open. Watching, listening. Ire will come agiast not tonight, by morning, or joints it like old hinges you. V barely slept, just dozed and jerked awake over and over. The wind outside hasn't stopped, but it's shifted. You smell dust now. Less moisture, more sand, west wind. Poke your head out from the tower slit and squint into the hay. It's light enough to see the path again. Faint, winding, half-buried under frost, but still there. The next tower is, maybe a 3-hour walk, 4 if the wind gets worse, and you haven't eaten. You pull out the last of your rations. A hard cake of sorghum wrapped in waxed cloth. You suck on it more than chew. It tastes like effort and obligation. No wonder the veterans used to crumble it into hot water, if they had any. You wash it down with the last of your meltwater, now cool and metallic from sitting in your tin. You pa. Or gear's the same as yesterday's beer, blanket, dried gourd bottle, 3 coins, 1 flint, 0 fire. But your mindset is different. You survived a night in a tower that wasn't meant to host anyone, and now you're moving again. That matters. A path starts rough. Slippery stones, loose shale, the kind of footing that makes you lean forward too much, like a drunk fighting the slope. You pass the same twisted bush twice, circling back after a misstep. But eventually the wall appears agon-faint, then fuller. Still towering, still indifferent, with it comes a sigh. Carved into a stone slab, halfway sunken in the dirt, is a single character. Want to look out to gaze. Was probably the name of this stretch, or the next tower, or a reminder to the patrol to keep their eyes open. You run your finger across it. The grooves are shallow, wind-worn, someone carved. This hundreds of years ago, maybe more, and even now, in your cheap boots and plastic coat liner, it still feels personal. You keep walking. The next tower is a low one, more a lookout post than a fort. It's shaped like a brick with one eye. No roof, just 4 stone walls and an open top. You climb the slope, heart hammering. It's colder.
Up here exposed, but you see something.
Spark. No, a flicker. Side the tower, hidden by one wall, someone's built a tiny fire. You freeze. Then, carefully, slowly, you approach the entrance. There's no door. Just a windbreak made of stacked branches and bundled straw. You ease it aside and peer in. A figure sits huddled in the corner, wrapped in blankets, holding a cup. They look up, you clear your throat. The 2 of you stare at each other for a moment too long. And the person may be a woman, maybe not, nods once, curtly, and gestures to the fire. Step inside words. Namest warmth. And you realize something. This, too, was part of the system. Not official, not documented, but real. Travelers helping travelers, soldiers helping strangers. Fire passed without question. Because out here the cold isn't your enemy. Salationio you sit. For a wire body says a thing, and it's perfect. Fire crackles low, burning twigs. Not logs. It gives off just enough heat to keep your fingers from going numb, but not enough to make you forget you're still in a tower made of wind and stone. The stranger shares a strip of dried root, bitter, chewy, and probably medicinal. You chew it anyway. A rhythm here, a silence you both respect. Every so often, the stranger reaches into their bag, a patched oilcloth satchel, and pulls something out. A strip of cloth, a curved needle, a piece of soap. Watch them clean and stitch a torn glove with slow precision. A glance at your bouton, at your coat. Then, without a word, toss you a waxed pouch. Inside, pine sap, stiff and amber-colored. You recognize it. It's used to seal cracks, waterproof seams, keep fingers from splitting in the cold. Till no word. But this is what language used to be before language got fancy gesture, gift response. You nod. They nod back. A deal struck in the grammar of survival. Eventually they speak. A single word, each one. Upo an answer. 17 they whistle. And surprised Northline. You nod. I offer you the tin cup. Sip. It's hot, slightly sour, probably made from snowmelt and dried plum skins. You don't care. It warms your stomach and tastes like luck. I'm 30. Think they mean Tower 30, not their age. You try to imagine it. 30 towers, 30 night watches, 30 silent dawns, and then they say something else. Something heavier. If for every beacon tower had someone. Don't reply, because you've heard that story too. From old journals, half-lost oral histories, fragments of dispatches carved into slate and bamboo. Back then, the line was manned, not just patrolled. People lived here. For weeks or months, but for seasons, for years, generations. The towers weren't ruins, they were homes. Odd posts with gardens, watchtowers with families, fires not just for warning but for tea and warmth and stories. You look around. The walls are cracked. The fire pit is just a circle of charred stone. The stranger's coat is made of stitched plastic and quilt scraps. The idea still lingers like smoke. This place used to mean something, and maybe still does. Ooh, take off your glove and reach into your coat. Pull out one of your coins, copper, worn, a little bent. Without ceremony, you set it on the floor between you. A stranger eyes it, then, after a pause, places a small folded square beside it, some kind of pressed leaf, preserved in wax. Trade. Two of you nod again. Side, the wind rises, the fire spits. Out inside the tower, two sentinels share silence. Ought to survive the night, ought to honor it. Ooh, sleep. Not deeply, but well enough. The stone floor is unforgiving, but the stranger shares a strip of woven mat, and the fire burns long enough to keep the worst of the cold from creeping into your bones. You dream of signal fires, dozens of them, looming in sequence across the ridgelines like falling stars in reverse. And you wake, the stranger is gone. Oh, sound. No, just their absence, and a faint impression in the mat where they'd slept. They've left something behind, a single pine needle laid across your pack strap. Ooh, take it as a farewell, or a blessing, or both. Side, the sky is sharp and dry, the wind has calmed. Frost hasn't. You shoulder your gear, now slightly heavier thanks to the leaf-wrapped gift, and begin walking again. A path grows clearer with the light. You begin to recognize the contours of the land not from memory, but from something older. Instinct, maybe. Or echo. The wall curves slightly here, dips there. Every few li, there's a marker stone, some engraved, some painted, most just worn stubs jutting from the earth like broken teeth. They all point one way, west. Ooh, pass another ruin. Not a tower, just a heap of stones and a collapsed archway. Someone once lived here too, you think. Resting place for messengers. Or maybe a shrine. You crouch and brush away some of the dust. There's something carved into one of the stones. A sentence almost gone. People come and go. The fire does not die. Ooh, stare at it for a while. Then keep moving. By midday, your water's gone. You eat the last of your cake. You ration your breath and learn to walk with the wind instead of against it. Your shadow stretches longer behind you. And just when you begin to wonder if Tower 18 has collapsed completely, you see a line. Not a shadow. Not a crack, a line, man-made. Signal rope blackened from smoke, but still intact, stretched between two upright stones. And beyond it, a shape, queer, tall, still standing. Tower 18. Ooh, approach slowly, or legs ache. Your eyes sting from wind and hope. The door is missing, but the frame holds. Inside darkness. The ceiling has collapsed in one corner, letting in enough light to see debris, old ashes, a broken ladder. Out on the far wall, painted in red, faded but clear, is a handprint, more deliberate. Someone stood here once and said, "I am here." Ooh, press your own hand next to it, but doesn't match. But that's not the point. Ooh, lower your pack. Kneel. Begin gathering twigs and bits of old straw from the floor. You arrange them in the pit. You strike your flint once, twice, 10 times. Only smoke, then flame. Ooh, sit back and breathe in the warmth, and watch as the tiny fire becomes more than heat. It becomes a signal, not for war, not for warning, but for presence. You made it, to now someone else will see the smoke. Maybe they'll come, a fire rises. Not high, not bright, but high enough, bright enough. Ooh, climb the steps crumbling, wind-torn to the upper ledge of Tower 18. From here the land unfolds like parchment. Dry hills, scattered pines, the broken spine of the wall trailing off into haze. In the distance, another tower. Maybe 19. Maybe a ruin. Hard to tell. Hard tear a strip from your map, roll it into a taper, and light it from the fire below. It flares, brief and angry. You hold it, you palm straight, like you've practiced. The wind tugs. The smoke curls eastward, signal. Then you wait. Nothing happens for a while. A sky shifts, clouds stretch. Bird circles black-feathered, watching, disinterested. And a flicker, far off, another tower. Not a fire, not yet, but movement. All squint. Raise your hand to block the glare. A person. Tiny from here, but unmistakable. Standing, watching, then disappearing back inside. Ooh, smile, not because they saw you, but because they responded or going to light theirs too. For the first time in weeks, your shoulders drop, not from fatigue, but relief. The line is alive, maybe not everywhere, maybe not like before, but someone else is out there, holding the line with you. Descend again, the fire still burns. You add a few more twigs, careful not to waste. You unwrap the leaf the stranger gave you. It's dry persimmon, preserved and sticky with sweetness. You eat it in slow bites. Let it dissolve on your tongue.
Clean your hands, repack your gear.
Using charcoal from the edge of the fire, you press your palm onto the stone beside the old one. Firm, smudged, but present, record. Someone was here. Tomorrow, you'll go west again. Or maybe stay. Wait for the one from Tower 19 to visit. Trade food. Trade words, trade stories. But for now, as dusk folds over the land, you sit beside the fire and listen to the quiet. A wind carries no threat, only distance, and somewhere in that distance, a second fire begins to rise. A moon is high when you set out again. You've got fewer supplies now: dried hawthorn, half a gourd of water, one last wax-sealed note from the guard captain back in Section 8. But your steps are steadier. There's something about that fire signal last night that straightened your spine. Even the wind feels different today, less like resistance, more like motion. Walk the ridge. To your left, the wall breaks off into jagged ruins. To your right, a narrow path skirts the edge of a cliff, where grass grows like stubble and goats sometimes leave their droppings like landmines. You take the cliff path. It's riskier but faster. And besides, you've got something on your mind. You've heard rumors about Tower 21. Not the military kind, the other kind, the strange kind. Ispers say that long after the garrison left, someone stayed behind. Not a soldier, not a farmer, but a caretaker. A hermit? No one agrees. The villagers just call him the Ink Man. No one's sure if that's because he was once a scribe, or because his fingers are always stained black. Scoff at the thought, but not entirely. Not because you believe in ghosts, but because enough people don't. That's when the strange stuff tends to be real. By noon, the tower is in view. It's different, lower, broader. You'd almost miss it if not for the vines growing up the side like a green beard. Approach cautiously. No sound, no smoke, no livestock. At the doors open. Knock anyway, Twiss, out of politeness. And you step inside. What you find is books everywhere, not bound in leather, just scrolls, parchments, old ledgers, bamboo slips piled into clay jars and hollowed-out bricks. Someone's copied things, recorded things, filed them like a makeshift archive. Brush the dust off one, as a weather report. 167 days' worth. Other names, possibly patrols, possibly local births. The calligraphy is tight, neat, deliberate. Not artistic, but necessary. And then you hear it. Shuffling. Not feet, not paper. Spin around. And there he is, small, bent, a tunic tied with rope. Long fingernails in black fingertips and sharp eyes. He doesn't speak at first, just watches you. And finally, you're late. That's all you blink. He gestures to a small table, a brush, an open scroll. Your turn. Somehow you understand. You sit. You dip the brush. Right. Day, the wind direction, your last meal, the last tower you stayed in, the last person you saw. It's not an interrogation, it's a ledger of being. The Ink Man nods, and disappears into the stacks. Don't stay long. And before you go, he presses a dried plum into your palm. Gift. Wordless. You walk away, you realize, this tower isn't for defense. For memory. And in this age of forgetfulness, maybe that's more important. You descend from Tower 21 with the plum still in your hand. It's shriveled but fragrant, sweeter, with a whisper of smoke. You don't eat it. Not yet. Not until you understand what it means. Because that's what the Ink Man trades in, isn't it? Hot food. Not weapons. Meaning. The next stretch of road is different, less traveled. Wall here has sunken into the hills like old bones, visible only in fragments. A toppled stone, a rusted ring bolt. The skeletal remains of a beacon tower swallowed by earth and time. No one patrols this path anymore, but you walk it anyway. Storm rolls in from the Westlow thunder, bruised sky. You quicken your pace, looking for shelter, and that's when you find her. He's kneeling by the side of the path, head bowed, robes the color of dust and barley. A woven basket lies at her side, Upturned, contents spilled, mushrooms, small herbs, a dead lizard. You stop a few paces away. She doesn't look up. You clear your throat. Still nothing. Lee, when you take a step closer, does she speak? Don't touch the circle. You freeze. Only then do you notice it drawn into the dirt with a finger or stick. A perfect ring of symbols and stones. Inside it, at the center, a curled paper charm anchored by 3 pine needles. You step back. She finally looks at you. Ox trouble, she says simply. Ooh, don't ask for explanation. You've heard the stories. In these parts, foxes don't always wear fur. Some wear faces, borrow voices, slip into houses that forget to salt their thresholds. Ooh, glance again at the charm. Does it work, you ask? She shrugs. Sometimes, and after a pause, she adds, it's not for them, it's for us. To remember what's real. That's the trick with foxes. They don't kill you. They just convince you you're someone else. Ooh, nod. It's a bit too close to truth for comfort. E gathers her basket and stands. Brushes off her robes, and she says the strangest thing. Our 23 is awake. Ooh, blink. I thought it was abandoned. E smiles. It was, but it dreamed itself back open. With that, she walks past you down the hill toward the woods. Ooh, don't follow. Just watch the charm in the circle. The pine needles haven't moved. Ooh, walk on. Evening, you spot Tower 23. E was right, too. It is a wake-up with fire, not with people, but with light. Somehow, a single lantern glows behind the arrow, slit faint but steady. Ooh, stand there a long time, and for the first time in your journey, you whisper not to be heard but to yourself. Thank you, and the wind-bidden answers. You sleep beneath the shadow of Tower 23. Hot inside it doesn't feel right. The door is sealed with paper strips, each one hand-painted with characters you don't recognize. Not quite Chinese, not quite script, more like intentions, old ones. Oh, you spread your cloak beside the outer wall. The stone still holds the sun's warmth. You eat a sliver of dried pork, and the last of your millet cake. But not the plum, not yet. All fall asleep quickly, no dreams. When you wake, the world has shifted. As do on your pack, your boots are dry. Something's been moved. A brush, your inkstone. They lie beside you neatly aligned, not stolen. Just touched. All check your pouch, nothing missing, nothing added. Except one thing, a coin outworn, not imperial. Not any dynasty you recognize, but on one side, carved faintly, to remain is to remember. Oh, don't laugh. Instead, you pocket it, because out here you've learned. Things that arrive without explanation usually are the explanation. The road bends north again. Hills give way to flatland, wide fields once cultivated, now golden with wild barley. And then you see the markers. Gravestones. Hundreds of them, set not in rows, but in spirals. Circles within circles, expanding outward like the ripple of a stone dropped into history. Stone carved with names. Some in seal script, some in tally marks. One simply says, Mother. You stop, kneel, light the small candle you keep for offerings. Not religion, it's respect. Because someone kept these names alive long enough to carve them, and someone, maybe you needs to remember them. The candle burns, you hear footsteps, hot-armored. Not heavy, just soft, deliberate. Ooh, don't look up right away. You wait, then finally you speak. There's a battlefield. Voice replicious but kind. Oh. A promise field. U-turn woman stands behind you, robes faded but clean, hair in a braid. Her arms carry no weapons, only a rake. They served, she says, and they stayed. He marked them so he wouldn't forget. All nod and ask, do you know Tower 25? E smiles, oh, one knows it. But it knows you, and she points to a distant rise. There, almost invisible in the heat haze, stands the silhouette of a final tower, all quiet. Waiting, you thank her, she doesn't reply. As you leave the field, you notice something, or name, carved faintly into the back of the stone where you lit your candle. Not by you, not recently, but there, ready waiting. Don't speak, you just walk, because some names are written before you arrive. Some towers remember you before you ever knock. All reach Tower 25 just before dusk. It's taller than the others' 5 stories of pale stone, each level darker than the one below. As if the tower itself is fading upward into ash. The door is ajar, not broken, but open, an invitation, or a dare. There's no one outside, no sign of campfires or sentries, but you feel the presence, like stepping into a room just after a conversation has ended. Side, it's quiet. Not abandoned resting. Dust lies in soft drifts along the floor, undisturbed except for a narrow path that winds inward. Spiraling around the walls like a walking meditation. Follow it. First floor storeroom, empty shelves. A cracked jar still smells of fermented plum. A child's toy lies in the corner, a wooden duck on wheels, head missing, string curled like a question mark. Second floor, archive. Scrolls long disintegrated, but the racks remain. Burn marks on the far wall. A single phrase still visible, scorched into plaster. He who forgets the watch becomes the danger. Third floor. Dormitory, 6 cots, all made. Comb rests on one clean. The mirror above it is shattered, but only in the center, as if struck by a single perfect thought. Fourth floor, shrine, not to gods, to names. Hundreds of them written in charcoal on the walls, some in firm hand, others in a child's scrawl. A few overlap, as if they had been rewritten again and again over the years. Ooh, step closer. One name glows faintly. Yours. You don't touch it. Instead, you climb. A 5th floor is the watchroom. It's exactly what you expected, and nothing like you feared. Large window faces north. Through it, you see the road you walked, the graves you passed, the towers behind you all the way to the hills near Tower 12. Aside the window is a writing desk, ink paper, a stool, a lamp that flickers without fire. Next to it, a small wooden box. Ooh, open it. Side, a single dried plum, not yours, but identical, as also a note, ink still fresh, written in your handwriting, but not by your hand. A remember is to remain. Remain is to write. A write is to become the watcher. Ooh, sit. Ooh, take out your own plum. Place it beside the one in the box. A match. You don't ask how. You pick up the brush. You begin to write. Not because you were told, but because someone years from now will need to know this path was walked. At the towers still stand, that a name, once spoken, can echo longer than a wall. Outside, under the darkening sky, the others begin to glow, one by one, like stars, like memory, like watchfires aiting for the next traveler. Or you are the one after, are the one who will read this and remember, or the watcher now. Welcome home.